Firehouse #3, Denver's oldest station, responded to a St. James fire on March 23, 1895, where 4 firefighters lost their lives. In 1938, ladder truck #4 collided with #3's pumper en route to Elitch Gardens, claiming 2 more firefighters, including Denver's first black captain. Though times have changed, we must honor those who paved the way for the brave men and women who risk their lives daily to protect our city. Tonight's story, Station #3, told by Beatrice Griffin.
Well, hello, Beatrice. How you doing today?
I'm fine, William. How are you?
Simply fantastic, and thank you for asking. We know that you want to be here to tell a story about your father, and you're going to give us a little history that leads up to what makes this story so unique. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, well, would you like to start?
Yes. Actually, this is a story about Firehouse #3, the one that many of us here in Denver, and for those of you who do not know about our beloved Firehouse #3, it is the firehouse that is in the historical Five Points area. It is the oldest operational firehouse in the city and county of Denver. And it is also the place where my father was able to have his very first job that he absolutely loved. I might probably get back and say it's not necessarily his first job, but it was his most beloved job.
Talking about that little itty bitty, what they call a fire station that sits right down there off 5 Point.
Yes, sir. That is the very one I'm speaking of.
I don't even know how they get trucks in there, but go ahead.
Well, that's another story for another time. But yes, it is the smallest, but it is also the oldest and operational in Denver. I'm going to go back, way back to 1895. There was a huge fire called the St. James Fire, and this fire was located in Denver around 15th and Champa Street. And the fire rang out about 10:50 at night on March 23rd, 1895. And what they used to call the firehouses in those days were described as hose, HOSE, as opposed to houses. So hose #3, which is the same as firehouse #3, rushed to the fire. And at that time, there were black firemen. They were not necessarily segregated, but they were all filling in different areas throughout the very small and few firehouses that we had in Denver. Hose #3 rolled out to the fire, and it was headed by the white captain. As they rushed into the fire, all 4 of these gentlemen perished in this horrible fire. They rushed in with their hoses. They were approaching the fire to take, they felt that the fire started in the basement, so they were directing their equipment to the basement. And as they went in, the whole floor just gave away and perished. And it was a very descriptive, horrible writing about how badly they were burned, and it was terrible. The city at that time was, well, let's say we were not overly friendly with black people, but for Denver at that time, people were kind of held in a little regard as black folks. Black folks had a little bit of money, they had a few jobs, they were more educated than probably most, and there were a lot of problems with what the white people feared we would take their jobs and whatnot. So they still were very, very happy that these men were so zealous that they would fight a fire to try to keep all of Denver. The lower end of Denver could have burnt because of the way the buildings were built in those days. So they wanted to acknowledge and honor all of the firemen, but they didn't really want to go overboard with that. So at the time of the funeral, they decided to put all of the men in the same types of coffins so no one could tell who was black or who was white, and they could honor them simultaneously, because that was the only way you could get away with it, to give these black men any kind of credit for the lives that they lost for the fire.
what you're saying, make sure I get this right. What you're saying is that they put them all in the same box, but they were burnt. So a lot of them probably didn't want to be open. But
No.
even more so, it was because they didn't want to recognize the black firemen, especially the ones that had died. Is that what I'm understanding?
That is correct, but there were 4 separate coffins. There were 4 separate coffins. You couldn't tell which one was who. I imagine the families knew when they took them to bury them, they had different sites, but at the procession that they used for the city, they had 4 coffins that looked just alike. We'll fast forward through that period of the late 1800s all the way up to the 1920s. Things got progressively worse for Black folks. The Klan began to rear its ugly head in Colorado and in Denver, and as many people know, we've had a few places that have been named after people who were political leaders, but they were also Klansmen in Denver.
Do you know any of the names?
Oh, let's see. How about Stapleton?
Not Stapleton.
Oh, yes.
Like in Stapleton Airport.
As in used to be Stapleton Airport and formerly the Stapleton area, which is now Central Park, that same one. Our governor, he was one of the head Klansmen in Colorado. At the point of the height of the Klansmen's activity, they wanted to make sure that any Black firemen that we still had, which we did still have a few, they were relegated to doing very menial tasks. They were not allowed to really do the work that they could do, which was firemen's and in the full capacity. Oh, they got to clean the laundry. They got to clean the trucks. They got to hose down and wash the actual fire stations. But they really were not allowed to get out and really fight fires.
So what you're saying is they were like handymen or maids or flunkies, or not here to do a job like we do, but you can clean, you can wipe off my tires and paint my building and make sure that I'm looking good.
That is correct. Plus, you didn't have a title. You were not a lieutenant. You were not a captain. You surely were not a captain. We didn't get a captain until the first African American captain until 1925.
Wow. So that's what you're bringing us up into.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's get to it.
This is where the story of my father comes into place, Sidney Joseph Freelo Jr. My father had moved to Colorado when he was about 19 years old from New Iberia, Louisiana. And he got up here. He was a hardworking man. He had worked on the railroad, a few other jobs. And then he got a job as a busboy. A busboy, mind you. He's 20, at this time, he's 25 years old. These men were only allowed to work in the Denver Athletic Club. And the Denver Athletic Club, which still exists, was the go-to place for the mayor, the governor, the chief of police, and the fire chief. Well, while my father is working and waiting on these gentlemen, he caught the eye of Chief Healy. And Chief Healy asked my dad, well, hey, Freelo, what is it that you think you'd like to do? What are your aspirations? And as my father told me, he says, well, let's see, what am I going to do? A Black man in 1932, Denver, Colorado, America. But he said, I'm open for anything. So the chief told him he would have an opportunity coming up where they were going to be hiring some more firemen, African-American firemen as well. He promised him he'd get him all the training tools and study guides he needed and give him a shot at getting in to take the test. Told me, I can't promise that you're going to pass, but I'll give you that opportunity. So my dad heeded the invitation. He got the materials, and my mother described to me many times how hard my dad studied for that test. She said, I'd never seen him study that hard for anything. He wanted this job so badly.
Let me understand this. A young man from the country, down south, only had a 7th grade education.
Yes, sir.
And he's sitting here to take a test. I hope everyone knows a lot of times police tests, firemen tests, just test in general are designed to keep us folks out.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to put the gravity on the time, the education, what your father had to push through to even get this opportunity. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yes, thank you, Bill. That's very true. I imagine that even though it was only a seventh grade education, it was a Catholic school education. I don't know if that made any difference or not,
But they
but
beat it. I don't know. I'm just leaving.
I don't know. But in Louisiana, that was, everybody was raised Catholic at least once. So that was what my father's education was based on. But he did get through and pass the test, and he was so, so happy. But because all of the firemen now are segregated to Firehouse #3, which the building we know now in Five Points was finished in 1931. So this is where my father was placed, and absolutely loved his job. He was so proud to be a fireman. The whole community revered and loved our firehouse. The community just gathered. It was kind of like a gathering place. We were very proud of our black firemen in the Five
Let me
Points
ask you
community at
this.
that time.
Those firemen in H.O.T. #3, were they allowed to do the task of firemen? Did they actually go out and fight fires and things of this nature?
Yes, by the grace of God, by this time, now that we got them all in one place and we can keep an eye on them, now we're going to let them be firemen, real firemen. And Chief Healy often commented that his Firehouse #3 firemen were the best in the city. They were the absolute best in the city. They were first on the scene. They had no fear. They were fearless, and they did their job, and they did it above and beyond the call of duty, which that's how most of us have to live our lives sometimes. We have to be twice as good to be considered average.
Your father was amongst this elite group of the firemen of Denver.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Now, Captain Healy isn't the captain that gave him the start.
No, Chief Healy. Chief Healy is the man who gave him the opportunity, and the first captain of the Firehouse #3 was Captain George Brooks. My father's doing his normal regular job, and one Sunday evening, about 7:30, I believe it was, a fire broke out at Elitch's. There had been some mistake on saying whether it was Lakeside or Elitch's, but I found out it was Elitch's. Firehouse #4 is responding to the call. My father's truck, #3, is doing what they call a rotation. They're moving their truck to kind of take the place of that house in case something breaks out, so there's coverage between the two. Well, of course, there's no modern communication technology apparatuses at that time, so they're not exactly sure how the route is going from one to the other. So they have an accident, a horrible, horrible accident on 15th and Larimer. According to the newspaper at that time, the people at fault were Firehouse #3. Surprise, surprise. But I will give you more detail on that later. They crashed into the hook and ladder, which was #4. My dad's was called a pumper. Their machine was a hook and ladder. The accident was so ferocious that when the truck that my dad was on hit the hook and ladder, it swung around and hit I won't say a pedestrian, but hit an automobile with 3 individuals in it who were absolutely thrown out of the car. One of the women in the car was thrown out and landed on the top of the pump of the hook and ladder. She survived. They don't know how she survived, but she did.
Wait a minute. 2 fire trucks collide, or one tries to avoid, or some kind of way they hit the other car, and the people in that car get thrown out the car, ended up on the ladder. Yes. And what happened to the firemen?
Well, there were about 3 firemen from Firehouse #3 who were injured pretty extensively as well. But my father's truck took the brunt of the accident. 2 of the men died. One was Captain Brooks, and the other one was James Simpson. They were killed. My father, who was riding on the side at the time, was thrown off of the truck. His head hit the curb. He had major skull fractures, and the paper listed him and a gentleman by the name of Carl DePrad as hanging on to life, not sure if they were even going to live. At the time the newspaper article was printed on Monday, he was still in the hospital, and he did hang on. I mean, it was terrible. He had 3 blood transfusions. Every orifice in his head was bleeding. But they said that's what saved his life, because the pressure at least had somewhere to go, and it would have killed him if he did not have that.
Was there other injuries or casualties in this?
No, the only people who died, and I was mistaken in a lot of the information I had understood as a child. It's interesting when you do the research, you find out some things that your parents thought they remembered, or how you heard the story wasn't quite correct. But the only casualties were the black firemen. And the other firemen, there were 3 other firemen that were also hurt, but the only people that got to keep a job and keep working were the white firemen, which really tore my dad up.
Wait. Why do you think it is, or what did your father maybe tell you? Why is it that there were, are you saying 1 casualty, 2 fatal?
2 casualties, 2 black men died.
And then another couple hanging on with their life.
Yes.
Why is it that so much damage came with those people on those truck,
Yes.
and nobody was injured on the other truck?
They were hurt. Now, there were white firemen who were hurt, and actually, which is interesting, I did a detailed reading of how the white firemen were carried away in an ambulance. My dad and the other firemen that were hurt were put in a patrol car and taken to the hospital.
Oh
Now,
my God! Wait a minute. Give me a minute. I'm getting ready to get mad. This was in 19 what?
1938.
1938. Okay. Woo, let me straighten up here. They were taken in patrol cars. The other men were in ambulance. And they received all these other injuries while the others walked out. And I believe you were saying how much your dad loved the job, but through these injuries, the white firemen, they were able to land
Light duty
jobs, like wiping off your tires, cleaning up the fire station. I mean, light duty, right? And
actually working behind a desk.
That's real light. Okay.
Yeah.
But what I was saying was they had stuff for these black firemen to do as firemen, like light duty, not really fight. But what you're saying is when these men that were fighting, putting their lives on the line every time that they go out, just like their white counterparts. Now they're hurt. They can't even get in an ambulance. They get put in a patrol car. The other get desk job, light duty jobs. And our brothers, what happened to them?
Well, my dad got, full payout. He got, he got a pension every month. My mother got a good lawyer, as she's mentioned in many times in my life about having a good type of lawyer. And she finagled and got money, a payout, a cash settlement, which she used to buy the house that I grew up in on 23rd and High Street, which, by the way, was as far east as you could move as a black person, because there was the color line. The color line existed in real time. And in 1939, that's as far east as she could go. And
Oh
she said,
no,
"Oh yeah,
not no no no.
oh yeah,
You could go live wherever. It's a free
oh no."
country.
And Colorado Boulevard might as well have been Cherry Creek because you couldn't get across York Street, let alone to Colorado Boulevard,
Colorado
not in
Boulevard.
1939. No.
So, Beatrice, this is very devastating, really, and I know we're kind of laughing about it, but could you
Yeah.
touch a little bit on your father's injuries, his not being able to stay working in that capacity or even on a light job? Did it take a toll on you, your family, well, let me back up. You're not here yet.
No, but it did take a toll, Bill. The toll was taken from the time my father was able to get back home and whatnot, and he could work. I mean, he could do some things, but the head injury that he had a metal plate in his head, and in those days, heck, Excedrin hadn't even been invented, so there wasn't a lot you could take for pain. So he drank. I think he drank because of the pain. I know the pain in his head. He used to have horrible, horrible nosebleeds. I can remember those when I was a little girl. And also just the depression of not being able to hold down that desk job that his white counterparts had been allowed to do. And that really that affected him mentally and physically. And my mother, being a woman of her word and took her vows extremely seriously, she never left my father's side. And it was difficult. It was really difficult a lot of times because when he would drink, he wasn't always a very pleasant person. And I later understood why she was as faithful and wonderful a woman as she was with him, because she said, "This is not the man I married. This is the man that this horrible accident created, and I'm not leaving because I know he loves us. He just can't." There was no place to go and have a conversation. You weren't able to go have, let's go have a conversation about your depression. They didn't do that. So
Let's
he
get
closed.
into a group.
All
Let's go
right.
have an alternative group. If you're feeling kind of bad, call this number. None of that.
None of that. None of that. Literally, our house was paid for by his blood, sweat, and tears. And but he was a good dad. He just had a horrible, horrible accident, which I am sure many, many black men in this country have suffered between things like that, the war, and God knows whatever else. You know, it's not easy being a black man when nothing bad happens other than just living life. So
Do you feel that justice or attention or anything about the open coffins where the men were buried in unmarked coffin? They didn't open it. They
yeah,
didn't
they didn't
know.
mark the coffins.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we come up to a wreck where this group gets serviced, this group's put in a car and stuff. Do you feel that any of these injustices have came to light as far as our Denver history?
I don't believe so, Bill. I don't believe that unless you dig, like I dug into a lot of the historical information a lot of information that I had to get with the library that is in the Western genealogy section, pulling up all of this old information. Also finding out that the equipment that Firehouse number 3 wasn't top of the line. They got the hand-me-downs. They got the things that were used by the other firemen. And they have discovered that they really believe that the reason that there was the accident, it was not because Firehouse number 3 was being negligent. It was because they had poor operating equipment, like the brakes might not have worked. I remember my mom said that James, who was driving the truck, put his foot on the brake so hard he almost literally pulled the steering wheel out of the column. That's how hard he was trying to stop. Well, obviously the brakes weren't working. No, I don't think Denver knows all of that story, because you got to dig for it. If you don't dig for things, sometimes they're not going to tell you the whole truth. Nobody wants to tell the truth.
So we had inferior equipment, which could have, like the other firemen, didn't quite get it hurt like the other firemen. And It's not just the hand-me-down, it's also the maintenance of the hand-me-down wasn't up to par. Nothing that they had was to give them a fighting chance to fight fires for their own city, for their own community. Just as probably a silly question, did black firemen only can go put out black fires?
No, no. I know that's a good question, though. No, if they're not believe if they had needed them to go to Elitch's, they would have been in Elitch's. But no, when it came to, especially if you got a fire downtown, they're pretty close to fire. They would have been right there. My dad can tell me about fires that he went to where there was nothing but white people in the house. I can think of a crazy story, but I might not share it with you guys, that he mentioned when he had to carry a very heavy set Caucasian woman down some stairs, and he kept told my mom, boy, she was not a clean woman. I was almost dying and gagging, just taking her down, the ladder. So no, they fought fires wherever they needed to go.
Well, that's one of the things of being a firefighter, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
those are
you have
those
to be
things.
strong because no telling what you might have to go
Yeah,
through. Older,
yeah, yeah.
a fire breakout, the person could have just been working out or something.
That's right. They were asleep or whatever they were doing,
Right,
and he
right.
had to grab them, throw them over his shoulder, and go down that ladder. And they stayed in that same firehouse. They stayed from 1925, when the original firehouse, which was across the street from where we now know our firehouse number 3, until 1957. That firehouse stayed segregated.
Now, I just wanted to know, since then, since we built in 1957, and then they integrated it,
Yes. And
and okay, just one second. And then did they appoint another black captain?
it pretty much stayed a black captain even into that era. Yeah, it did. But when they integrated it, interesting that you mentioned that, they had volunteers. And I happened to talk by happen chance to the gentleman who was the first white firefighter who volunteered to work in that house when they opened it up.
Wait. I just want to understand. You said you talked to the one that volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
This must, first of all, he has to be very, very old.
Yes.
And second of all, how would you bump into the first person? Break it down.
But this is one of those things, by the grace of God. There's no other way to explain it. I was working at Kaiser. I was on the phone. Gentleman called in about a benefit, and we were talking, and I just happened to notice that he had been a retired fireman. And so I said, oh, my dad was too. And he said, oh, really? And I said, yeah. He said, well, where did he work? I said, he was in Firehouse number 3, down on 5 Points. He said, oh my goodness, man, that was the best firehouse in town. And I was the first white man to volunteer to go in and integrate that firehouse, because it was an honor to be able to fight a fire with those gentlemen in that firehouse. And that is what he told me. He said, he said, I didn't know your dad, because I told him when, the accident had happened. He said, but I know he had to be, he had to be a hell of a fireman. And I said, he was.
Another thing that I want our audience to really get, I know we're talking about racism and how it played a part even now and back then, but just that story right there is something that I want people to really hold on to, that everybody's not like that.
That's right.
There are people that are different colored than us that love you, and they're not afraid of you. There's a few, and it's like a culture, like they say, that wants to oppress and have this fear, like you mentioned about a fear of that we're gonna take their job. we gonna move next door.
Yes.
And they still have this fear.
Yes.
So, Beatrice, is there anything that we kind of missed, or you would like to tell us about this remarkable man that you call father?
Well, stories that probably don't necessarily belong in this program, but he was a man of God. He was a man that was committed to his family and his community, and despite the injuries that he had, he was a quiet man. He he liked to he taught young men in the neighborhood how to play golf because he became kind of a little city park champion during the day. Couldn't play golf anyplace else if you were a black man. He had to learn how to play as a caddy at the Denver Country Club, but he couldn't play there. You could caddy, but you couldn't play. But he was a wonderful man, and I love him. I mean, I understand his pain, and it gives me grace to know that he did not want to be that kind of a guy by drinking, but he was a good man and he did the best he could with what he had, considering what he had gone through.
Well,
Oh,
okay, go ahead.
one more little caveat, because I think you know this gentleman as well. Interestingly enough, after all of that, our very first black fire chief was someone that we both know, Mr. Roderick Janelle, which
Hey,
uh,
yay, yay.
thought
Yeah,
that was so interesting.
wait a minute, that was
Yeah,
the first black chief.
yes, I think that's
And
the
do you
only
know,
one.
do you know what year that was? I could probably find out. But what year he became
It
chief?
had, I want to say it had to be in the 80s, because I know he was out at that really bad fire, a really bad plane crash that we had when airport was called Stapleton, and that was one of the first big jobs he had to work on, and that was in the 80s. I know it was. I know it
Well,
was.
we have a black
Right.
chief. Maybe one day we can get him to come talk to us on Where Were
Yeah.
You. But B, that's what we call you. I know it's Beatrice, but B, I do thank you for sharing your story about your dad, about the history of what happened at Hose number 3. Hose Station, or is it Hose House?
House.
Hose House.
Firehouse.
Fire. Okay, fire, hose, or house? Which one?
House.
House.
Firehouse.
Firehouse number 3.
Yes.
Down
Station.
on the Station 3, down on the 5 Point. Well, thank you so much for sharing part of your history with us, especially that part about the firemen that your father was a part of and the history of Colorado. Is there anything else or anything that you would like to leave with our audience?
For future or further interest, if you have any, you can take a look down at the Firehouse Museum, which is down on the 15th in Champa. There's a lot of information, a lot of history. Some of the fire trucks as they looked when they were drawn by horses versus the ones that my father was in, which were fire trucks as we know them now. There's a picture of Chief Healy, which happens to sit very closely to the picture of Chief Janelle. So you can have birthday parties down there for your kids. It's just a really nice place to get a little history of the fire houses in Denver.
Well, B, thank you so much for this time that you've given us to share your father's history, a little bit of your story, Denver history, and the information that you gave us. I do thank you so much for answering my call.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me, William. It's been a pleasure.
Well, another episode of Where Were You? And we would like to thank our guests for this evening. Also want to thank New Me. New Me helps sponsor Where Were You? So go on and check it out. New Me /Arkway. Also, go on and hit that like. Go on and hit subscribe. Go on and hit that share. Go on and leave a comment. And if you find anyone that has a story, let me know. And hey, you bless someone today.